Hi, everybody, and welcome to Chef Workstation, one click away from everything. This is a part of our Chef Infra Best Practice series, which I can't get to my words out of apparently today. This is our few webinars in there, which is pretty nice. Today, we're just going to go over what Workstation is, sort of an overview and why you want to be using Workstation rather than DK. Then I'll give a little bit of a demo with policy files in action. It's going to be a reasonably short one because actually a lot of the magic that we've been adding is just kind of part and parcel of just using policy files now, which is quite nice. And the best place to go and find all that kind of stuff is in the docs website. And then finally, we'll wrap up with any questions that anyone's got. And then I will politely ask you to just join us at ChefConf this year or on one of our Twitch streams that we do every Tuesday and Thursday. If you haven't seen one of those, they're pretty nice. And we had one of those this afternoon. We had some nice participation, which is pretty sweet. As I said a second ago, we've got a full series that's coming up now, and we're sort of nearing the end of the best practice series. So we've had new Chef Infra client releases and improving those with Cookstyle. Cookstyle allows you to upgrade between chef versions reasonably easy and hopefully that painless as possible. We'll go over a little bit of that again today and see how Cookstyle fits into Workstation. Configuring Chef Infra and compliance with the built-in compliance functionality. Chef 17 shipped with compliance. The compliance phase, so you no longer need to use the compliance cookbook, which is really nice. Then we've got testing Chef Infra cookbooks fast with Docker and Docken. If you ever use Test Kitchen and you want to speed up your testing process and you don't want to bring up full fat VMs, you just need to know if your code runs, then that's a really great webinar to go and have a look at. Then there's custom resources, the building blocks of your cookbook. That's one I did. I went over why you would want to use custom resources and how you wrap up the complexity. That's a pretty gnarly topic in itself, so we'll be doing some more streams and that kind of stuff. So if you haven't seen that and want to ask us some more questions about those kind of things, feel free to jump on that. And then we did a automated chef deployment of GitHub Actions, and that was how sous chefs use GitHub Actions to test and automatically test, so unit test and integration test their cookbooks. And they've got a whole host. I think they're up to about 165 cookbooks, so they've got some gnarly testing scenarios there. And then the previous one was building immutable infrastructure policy files, and that was done by Jonathan. And again, we'll go over policy files again today and see how that all wraps up into your chef experience and making that tidier, nicer and neater and easier to understand. And the next one, we've got two here. So Chef Automated Infrastructure Management and policy file improvements. Again, you might notice here, we've done a lot of policy file improvements this year and what we can do there. Great, so just going to jump straight into it and say Workstation versus DK. The overview of this webinar is you probably want to be on Workstation rather than the ChefDK. The ChefDK has been deprecated for 2 years now. So at the end of December 2020, we deprecated and stopped updating DK, but you'll notice that the version numbers, we'll read out later on, are significant actually, and we've done some really nice improvements. So we'll be able to test against newer versions of Chef, using newer versions of Habitat, using newer versions of Inspect, those kinds of things. So TLDR of the whole thing is really upgrades from DK to Workstation. And if any of you have got any questions about any problems like can I move my current existing testing infrastructure from DK to Workstation, we can go over that at the end of it as well. So as you can see here, our Chef, if we do Chef -V at the command line, we can see a whole host of tools we ship out of the bag. And so if you haven't used DK or Workstation before, they're a really nice way of wrapping up a number of tools on the command line that you could say, right, I know these are all installed correctly and they're all in the opt directory. They're all installed. You haven't got to worry about if I install this version of Chef Inspect and this version of Chef Infra Client, do they work together? Are the gem versions Do they work together? And then if you're using something like an XML processor, do they work together nicely? And do I need to go and build it from scratch? And the answer is, if you're using Workstation, no, which is nice. They just work. So yeah, Workstation, if we're using Chef Workstation 21.5, we'll get info client 17.0, inspect 436, the Chef CLI, which we'll go over a little bit detail later on, just version 5 of that, Habitat 1.6, and Test Kitchen 2.11. So some of these are a little bit out of date now, and actually we've started shipping Test Kitchen version 3, which has got some super cool policy file improvements. So your local developer experience just works. So you can just say, oh, I want to use policy files rather than Burks files locally. Test Kitchen knows about that, knows to automatically update them on the fly now, rather than having to sort of tell Test Kitchen to please update it, rather than just, hey, Test Kitchen knows that I'm using a local developer workstation, and I expect to be able to use the latest version of my recipe that I'm currently developing. So the default behaviors have now improved, and that you'll see throughout the presentation today, that what we really want to go and do here is continuously improve the local developer experience. DK was a really nice developer experience where we shipped all the tools and all the tool versions, and we say, yep, we know this works with this, and this works with this, and here's our sort of recommended tool set. And you'll notice that later on, some of the Chef gems that we ship, or some of the Ruby gems we ship, are not just Chef core things. There'll have been things like Stove, which help you upload to Supermarket, and Food Critic, which we no longer ship, but that helps you test cookbooks and create styles with your cookbooks. These things are all shipped with ChefDK, and we've got to improve that experience, moving to Workstation and saying, hey, we've got all these really cool tools, but now we've improved and we've moved from Food Critic to Cook Style. This allows us to update much more easily as well. So let's start with the policy files. So when we do Chef generate cookbooks, the generator now understands Docken, which is a really nice way of testing your kitchen, using Test Kitchen to do that. So we can do, and when we do Chef generate, you can say, hey, we're also going to use Docken, and we'll please generate me a config for that. And I'm going to be using policy files, or I'm not going to be using policy files. And you can say, right, well, when I do a Chef generate cookbook, please also generate me a policy file that will go with this cookbook, please. And Chef now does that out of the box, and DK never used to do that. So that's a really nice sort of smoothing that transition into using policy files and then getting you started really quickly. So you don't have to worry about how do I worry about the what is my cookbook called, and all the boilerplate things there that they're just brought in for you, which is pretty, really cool. And there's been numerous Chef language improvements here. So when we're developing policy files or policies code here, we can do we can use human readable blocks here, which you would be expecting from Chef. However, the built-in Chef resources have been improving over the last 2 years since we've moved from DK to Workstation. And these are things like NTP servers and that kind of stuff. And the built-in resources are now more available in Chef 16 and Chef 17 that will be being shipped with Workstation. If you're on DK, you'll have been stuck on older versions of Chef and have found it harder to upgrade from Chef 15 to Chef 16. This is a smoother transition upgrade there. And again, the Workstation experience is much nicer. So we can create policies using policy files, and then test that with Test Kitchen. And Test Kitchen fully understands policy files now, and understands when you're going to be testing things, how you're going to be testing them, and there's going to be sort of let me just have a quick jump on my notes here. The version of Test Kitchen we shipped in DK was 2.11, which is almost 2 years old. we're now shipping version 3 of Test Kitchen, and there's a huge swathe of improvements from pre-3 to 3.0. I would go through the changelog there, but I think I may bore everybody to death. But if you need to go and see that, the quick thing to do is just go and look at those notes there. So starting from the top here, what are the cliff notes of upgrading from upgrading to Workstation from DK? So there's been a huge swathe of knife plugin updates, kitchen updates. Cookstyle has replaced Food Critic. I'll go over that again in a second. Policy file workflow improvements. You notice I keep saying policy files because they are our recommended way of bringing in dependencies and managing your dependencies. There's been a huge amount of work there. So that's been really nice to see as a community member and as a chef employee to see the policy file improvements coming through, and it just makes the whole experience much nicer. We've been removing things that we no longer need. So things like Chef Sugar. You may, if you've been using Chef Sugar for the past few years, you say, "Oh no, but I really liked the Chef Sugar helpers that helped you detect whether you're on the Windows platform," and they're built in now. They're all built into the Chef 16 and Chef 17. So we no longer need Chef Sugar as a tool, as a gem in cookbook. So we just ship that for you as part of Chef Core, which is really nice. It just means that you haven't got to worry about extra bolt-on parts of the community. Oh well, this is a nice thing on a NEFM community. Why isn't this in Core Chef? Well, now it is, and you just don't have to worry about that anymore. Chef Run has kind of mostly replaced Chef Push jobs, and I'll do a demo of Chef Run in a bit. I've got some Raspberry Pis kicking around, and you'll see me applying a policy, again, a policy file to those clients. It's really nice, and it's a very nice way of quickly managing and pushing, chef code to code outwards from your workstation down that way. And you can't be, if you're not on the latest version of Chef there, or latest version of Workstation, you won't be using the latest version of the Chef CLI. So the Chef CLI is what really drives all of these interactions with Chef Run, Chef Push, that kind of stuff, and the Chef export. So if you ever use policy files at all, you'll be using the Chef command, and all of those improvements have gone through there. We've also removed Stove because that's actually, most of that functionality has been folded into the knife command now, or the Chef command as it is now. And actually, it's nice that we haven't got to rely on a third-party tool again to do the things that we'd be doing day in, day out. It's just built in, which is really cool. So sort of seeing what the community's been doing, improving that, and saying, yeah, that's a great thing. We'll be bringing that sort of best practice in, and that makes it a lot smoother for us to use. So as I said before, the Chef CLI has massive improvements, which means that interacting with parts of Chef are really nice now, and just get improving every single week, every single workstation release. You'll see that extra commands come through, the extra speed comes through as well. So we're working in the background about changing the language, and saying when we do a chef -v minute, it's kind of slow because it goes and interrogates all of the Ruby and all of the programs and has to stand all these things up. We're looking at ways of improving that and speeding that up as well. And you'll notice over the last 2 years, if you did chef -v, which went away and got all the version numbers for all the things, that it's like a fair amount of time sometimes because I have to load it. Basically all of those programs. What it does now instead it just interrogates them, and it's much quicker, which is nice. Chef Cookstyle, we've replaced Food Critic with Cookstyle, and Cookstyle just is a breath of fresh air. So if you've ever used RubyCop and you've been using Ruby, it's a bolt-on, or it's a domain-specific version of RubyCop. So it does things like Ruby styles, and so it can use all of the basic built-in things from RubyCop and say, hey, you're using an array, you'll want to use it like this. Or, hey, you've written this array wrong and I've called it here and this is where your errors are. It's a nice, quick way of finding, without having to run up integration tests or unit tests. You can just do a lint first of all, and the lint will find out where you've got syntax errors. And it's not always syntax errors you're worried about. It's, hey, how do I upgrade from Chef 15 to 16 or 16 to 17? And one of the things that was introduced in Chef 17 was the unified mode. And unified mode meant that custom resources were the sort of, instead of a compile and converge phase, they're in a single phase now, which is much easier to write, and it's much to sort of reason with them. But you need to be explicit whether it's on or off in Chef 17. And now Cookstyle can say, hey, this isn't Chef 17 compatible because you haven't done that. However, I can just run Cookstyle-A, and I can also correct that all across the place for you, and you're good to go. And there's hundreds and hundreds of what we call COPs there. So Ruby COP has a set of COPs, and they do the auto correction or telling you when you've done things wrong. Cookstyle has the same things. So Cookstyle has COPs, and there's chef specific ones, which is really, really nice. So let's say I was on Chef 15 and I was moving to Chef 16. I need a workstation version that understands Chef 16. So ideally you want to be on the latest version. However, what you'll ask, hey, well, I've got Chef 15, but I only want to upgrade to Chef 16 right now. How do I target that version of 16? Because I don't really want to worry about all the things that are coming in 17. We'll do that as a second pass, where you can target Ruby versions in RubyCop, and with Cookstyle you can target Chef versions, which is really nice. So you can say, tell me all the things I need to worry about for Chef 16, and auto correct them where you can, and let me know whether things have gone wrong. And that just makes the whole experience much, much nicer, and it ideally makes upgrading from Chef 15 to 16 much, much kind of a nicer operator experience, which is cool. This slide sort of goes over that in a bit more detail with less wavy arms by me. But yeah, the crux of it is auto correction is absolutely brilliant, and it makes my day much, much nicer, and I expect everyone else's day is much, much nicer as well. As a result of auto correction, catching all of the errors before you got there. So you may well have had a cookbook that just worked perfectly before, and then suddenly you're in a chef version, and you turns out you were using a thing that's actually been deprecated. That no longer happens that much, but actually we can pick that up before you get there. So one of the other gems that we've been mentioning is so the gems aren't really a gem, but it's a really key part of the workstation experience, which is Test Kitchen, which manages the sort of the create, test, and destroy life cycle of testing locally. And it's all of this is really testing locally and developing locally. So Test Kitchen is a key part of this. Now we've been really improving how that Test Kitchen experience works locally, and you'll see that the language improved, so the way that we configure Test Kitchen is improved recently as well. So the plugins have changed, the drivers have changed, and they're much, much more simple. So if you're just using Chef Infra, rather than having to specify the Chef Infra provisioner, that's now the default provisioner everywhere. So if you don't specify the provisioner settings at all, we'll assume you're using a Chef Infra provisioner, and that just means you don't have to worry about configuring that. So there's a bunch of really nice, sensible defaults. And one thing that we've been doing over the last couple of months as well is we're trying to get rid of the language of Chef Zero everywhere. Actually, a Chef Zero doesn't mean much to anyone. What we really want to be doing is calling it Chef Infra client. So it's now Chef Infra. So if you're using Chef Zero anyway, you want to be using Chef Infra instead. So Zero for Infra. And that'll get you onto the new ones. But as I said, Zero is still a thing. It's actually just a symlink really underneath the hood to the Infra provisioner. So they are the same thing, we're just renaming them. So let's go into a quick demo. Let me just stop my share a second, and you can see my big face. And let me start off with my cookbook with my policy files. So I've got a couple of Raspberry Pis upstairs that manage a have a really good Kubernetes cluster. But what we're going to do here is we would run rather than managing a Chef server. There's only 3 of them. I don't really need a Chef server. What I want to do is push my policies code up to those servers, and the quickest way of doing that is with a Chef run. Now, one thing I haven't done with this cookbook, which is quite nice, is use the metadata keyword. So actually now we can write, rather than say the cookbook Chef Pi, which is the one we're in currently, belongs here, we can just go and say metadata. Please just go and read the metadata, and that'll give us all of the things we like. And you'll notice that keyword has been swallowed up from the Burks file, and that actually works really nicely. So if you're moving from Burks file, you can again just use a metadata keyword, and that'll bring in all of that. So that gives you that. So I'm just going to get rid of that now. And so with Chef Run and the Chef CLI, let's bring that up. Chef Run. And what we're going to do here is just run our chef recipe, so our default recipe, against these 3 clients. And I'm just going to hit enter, and we're just going to see Chef Run do its magic. So it's going to package the cookbook up as an artifact, generate our local policy file, and then we're just going to go and apply that to those targets. It's a nice, simple demo. All we're doing here, whilst that's applying, it's probably not going to take very long because I've ran this earlier on, and it's not going to change anything. Fingers crossed. Famous last words. I'm going to remove the telnet packages. That was good. There's only 25 seconds to converge 3 nodes there. Yes, we've got removing the telnet package, and then we've got a bunch of kernel modules. We're going to either uninstall or just ignore it if we can't uninstall it, and then reboot. And then make sure we've got the NFS common and some HT paths. So all of the usual stuff you'd expect from if you're using the Raspberry Pi as a cluster here. You know, let's go and do these. These are the things I want on my machine, and I want to look like this. Policy files with Chef Run gives you that super quick. So for me, this is an eye opener, and like that is just a really nice workflow. All I need to go and do there is, once I've got my policy file and it's all sitting, all pointing at the right places, we can just run Chef Run on it, and that gives us 3 targets to run against, and it gives us a nice error messages back when it blows up. Let's say we don't have access to something, you get nice error messages back out of Chef Run. And we'll say we've used the metadata keyword here. That also lets us do some dependencies as well. So once we've loaded the metadata, hey, I also depend on line and hostname, and I know to pull that into my policy file lock. So it's got a quick look at that. So we've got hostname, host file, and line there. So basically all the usual stuff you'd expect from a policy file, which is nice. Okay, I'm gonna close that down. And I think actually I was gonna show 2 demos, but I think I've actually may have jammed 2 demos into one because I'm accidentally overly efficient today. Cool. I'm gonna quickly jump to the summary. See if I can. Reshare my screen. Lovely. Okay, yeah. So as you see here, the long and the short of it is, if you're using DK, update to Workstation. There's been some huge improvements, and it's still backwards compatible. So if you're running Chef 15 and you want to use Test Kitchen with Chef 15 or Chef 14 or Chef 13, and again, actually, if you want to use Chef 10 on Test Kitchen, you can do, because that allows you to target versions. So Test Kitchen, you can bring all the new tools with you, but say, actually, I want to run Chef 10, Chef 12, Chef 14, whatever you want to go and do. That's all configurable, so you're all good. But as a result, you get all the niceness around the Chef CLI that we've been improving over the last few years. And again, no DK is dead. Long live Workstation. We can bring those nice improvements to you. So you'll see if you're not on Workstation, you won't be getting any new updates. However, they are compatible, which is nice. I actually had to scratch my head when we were thinking about this demo, first of all, because I've been using Workstation for a number of years, and it was a really, really smooth transition from DK to Workstation. For me at the time, it was more of a rename, but as a result of us removing tools from the tool chain like Food Critic and replacing them with Cookstyle, the process of authoring cookbooks and updating cookbooks has just been a pleasure, and it's just much quicker these days. So yeah, so you can drive cookbook quality through Chef Cookstyle. One thing I didn't mention actually is you can actually customize all of the rules as well. So if you've got a number of rules that you want to override and say, actually, I don't care about unified mode, I want it false everywhere, you can update those rules to say that. You can also reduce your operating risk with inspec. So there's a number of CIS certified profiles that we've now been shipping recently, and we're shipping all the time, in fact, with inspec, and those inspec profiles will be are being shipped with later versions of Chef and Chef Workstation. So if you want to be bringing those down, you want to be on the latest version and try and bring this through. And there's a few things that we didn't really touch on inspec, but they've been improving. They haven't been doing any major versions over the last 2 years, which is nice because actually it means we haven't got any deprecations coming through, but we have been adding new features left, right, and center. So inspect resources have been added. I think there's 20, 30 resources have been added recently. And that's just in the last year. They've just been continuously improving on the inspect experience and how do I test my infrastructure? How do I test Kubernetes? And those things work. And you'll see actually there's a talk about testing Kubernetes at ChefConf this year. I thought I'd get that in there actually, because actually there's a really cool talk on testing compliance of Kubernetes with inspec. That's where that fits in. You want to be using the latest version of inspec to test those things. And let's reduce our operating expenditure here with Test Kitchen, like fast feedback cycles. You can test locally. You can test up in GitHub. You can test in GitLab Actions. These kind of things. We could test using Test Kitchen and get our quick feedback cycles that we're used to, and improving those with things like improved ChefSpec, improved inspec. Like do my cookbooks do the thing they want to do, and getting later and later versions and newer versions of those kind of things. Inspec runs faster. ChefSpec runs faster. Chef in general runs faster. The whole system runs faster because now we're on Ruby 3, which has had some significant performance improvements. So all of this kind of bundled together gives you a much nicer user experience. Before I jump on to the questions, got a couple of extra resources. So if you've not been joining us on the streams, highly suggest you join us there, because with nice interaction we've got there. So if you go and jump on and say, hey, I've got these couple of questions, you can kind of almost treat them as office hours. So if you're doing something about policy files and you want to go and grow us about policy files, or let's say the inspect client or custom resources, jump on and we can talk about that, which is really nice. So that you can find us there on twitch.tv/Chef Software. If you haven't run through any of the Learn Chef stuff, I highly recommend. There's some really excellent courses. We've just brought out the Bash course and the Custom Resources course. So those can be found on learn.chef.io. If you're not as well, staying on top of the latest and greatest from Chef, so that all the releases and the release notes can be found on the discourse, so discourse.chef.io, and that's a really nice forum for release announcements and questions. And if you don't want to use Slack, so our community Slack, discourse is a great way of finding long-term answers there. And the more and more people post there, the more people who go there, the more that you'll see that that community grow, which is really cool. And I mentioned it at the start of the stream, and I'm going to mention it again because there's some excellent talks this year. We've got some habitats, fundamental courses there. There's some testing Kubernetes kind of stuff there on ChefConf 2021, which is online between September the 7th and September the 9th this year. So if you go to www.chef.io/chefconf/registration to grab your free registration. Again, we are on online again this year, so we're doing it free. We're pre-recording some sessions, and there's going to be lovely live audience interaction. Cool. And finally, does anybody have any questions? Brilliant. Okay. And actually, if anyone wants me to go over anything that I may have skipped over, okay, maybe some inspect stuff, let's jump on some questions. Brilliant. I may have bamboozled people with all the information. Brilliant. Ah. We've got a question from Tom here. So how do I tell it what version of Chef I need to go to? So if that's Test Kitchen, there's some Test Kitchen docs, which I will pull up. Just bring that. So let me stop this share a second. Let me go grab a docs, because I don't know about you, I can never remember the exact version, the exact syntax for it. Just bring Test Kitchen. It's also helpful that the docs are nice and up to date for Test Kitchen, which is pretty sweet. And where are we? Okay, let me just bring this up, and I'll show you. Let's see, hopefully that's sharing the correct thing, but we'll see in a second. So the kitchen YAML can be told a bunch of things. One of them, if I scroll slower, is the provisioner version. So we've got Chef 0, Chef Solo. Actually, this needs to be updated to Chef Infra. It's only been happening in the last 2 weeks, so that's unsurprising that's not changed. Just go to product version. Lovely. So product version. So actually, we can support partial versions and full versions of the Chef client. So if you know you're using 15.3.21, you can say, right, I just want to test on Chef version 15 here, and that will work really nicely. So yeah, I'll pop that into the chat for you. Lovely. And that will give you the full rundown of so Tom, does Omnibus, I'm assuming that's the Omnibus installer. So that's where Chef gets its where you get Chef from. Yes, so yeah, Omnibus, the Chef Omnibus installer, it still works. So yeah, and you can tell it where to pull that. So yeah, the same install options are available for ChefDK and Chef Workstation when it comes to your provisioner settings. Or none of those things have changed, which is really, really nice. So if anything, it's probably been improved. Happy to jump on a Slack call with you later on, or a Slack conversation in the community Slack to see what how you've been installing it previously, and how and how that's changed. I'm gonna make an assumption that if you've not been putting it from the internet, you've been installing it on a machine, you can tell the provisioner settings to just not install Chef, and it's already on the box, so you're all good. So if you're running behind a firewall, or you can't install Chef from, let's say, the Omnibus Chef installer, which is the default place to pull Chef down from, you can say, hey, I've baked Chef into this image already, don't install it. And that's just an install option on the kitchen settings. That's been there for a while. The options for the provisioner settings may have kind of changed around since you've been on DK and moving to Workstation. The big thing of there is actually they make a lot more sense once you can see the new provisioner settings, and they've gotten us a couple of new things like the platform version and the download URL. I've missed the download URL because I never used the download URL. You can point it to your satellite server or your Artifactory server and say, right, get Chef from over here rather than the normal Omnibus place. Hopefully that answered your question. Do we have any more questions about upgrading from DK at all? Any worries or concerns? Because there's been quite a few people still using DK over the past few months, and actually there's these days not many reasons to be using DK anymore, because you can still target old Chef versions, which is quite nice. Brilliant. I'm going to hand back over to Chef Webinars, aka Rosa.